Starbucks stock is now up over 22% on the day and is now trading again at $94.07. And this all comes after the huge news this morning. Starbucks is replacing their CEO with Chipotle CEO Brian Niccol, and the market seems to really like what they are seeing. Again, stock is currently up around 22% alone on the day. Now, if we look at the past month, Starbucks is up over 27.5%. Now, if we look at the company year to date, they've essentially wiped out all of the losses that they've seen over the past few months. Again, they had a horrendous earnings report here in April that pushed the share price all the way down to around $72.50, which was the company's 52-week low. And during this time, there was an interview with Jim Cramer that the former Starbucks CEO had, and it was all the talk in the market. It was absolutely horrendous, and I'm not going to play the video for it. You can go check it out if you want. And that report showed us Starbucks sales were slowing, margins were decreasing, average ticket price internationally was declining as well, and change in transactions was down as well. So really horrific report for Starbucks. And in this interview with Jim Cramer, I think it was actually one of his better interviews, the Starbucks CEO clearly had no plan moving forward. He basically started stating that he wanted to make former Starbucks customers understand the immense value that they provided. But in reality, I think the end result of this interview is investors lost a lot of confidence in Starbucks management. Now, one of the things we have to understand, none of the underlying fundamentals of Starbucks have changed yet. Again, being up over 22% on the day is simply due to investors now being confident in management. Now, why are they so confident? Let's talk about Chipotle for a second. Now, if we look at Chipotle over the past year, they're up about 33.53%, and ironically enough, if we look at them today, they're actually down 11.56%. So Chipotle investors aren't happy about the news of losing their CEO. Now, Brian Niccol was actually hired in March of 2018. And while a lot of other restaurants have struggled during this time, Chipotle has continued to skyrocket. Look at them over the past 5 years. They're up over 200%. If we jump over to our stock screener, come up here and plug in CMG, that's the stock ticker for Chipotle. The metrics actually look really good, and it's honestly pretty rare to see a restaurant with metrics that consistently growing. Look at revenue per share, pretty much year over year, continuing to increase even during 2020, which is pretty impressive. The same is true with earnings per share again. Brian Niccol came on in 2018, so look starting right here. He grew earnings per share from 13 cents per share to in 2023, all the way up to 89 cents per share. So there was a lot of growth during his short tenure. Free cash flow per share, same is true. We can see pretty high levels of return on invested capital, especially for a restaurant stock. Now, it was a little bit lower for the first few years that he was there, but in 2023, as high as 16.6%. Now, let's compare this to how Starbucks has done since 2018. We'll plug in SBUX and hit enter. Now, overall, Starbucks hasn't necessarily done really bad during this time. Again, revenue per share has done a decent job of growing, going from around 2018 from 17.88 to 2023, 31.37, but that's nowhere near the growth that Chipotle has seen. We can see free cash flow per share has been a little stagnant. Obviously, 2018 was a really good year for the company, but even if you start in 2019, it's been pretty stagnant with not a lot of growth during the past 5 or so years, and the same is actually true with earnings per share. Not really seeing a whole lot of growth there. Overall, over the past decade, yes, it has been growing, but if we look at that starting at 2018, not nearly as impressive as Chipotle. Now, one of the things I do want to point out is Starbucks' return on invested capital is much better than Chipotle. We can see consistently over 20% for the majority of the past decade with the exception of 2020, which leads me to believe this has the potential to be a pretty high quality stock. Now, the new Starbucks CEO definitely has some work cut out for him. In fact, if we take a quick glance at the recent earnings report, I just want to point out a couple of quick things. We can see in North America, we saw negative growth in comparable store sales, negative growth when it came to transactions, and the only bright spot is ticket prices were up around 3%, so people were paying a little bit more for their food. But even despite ticket prices being up, their operating margin was down, sitting at 21%, when last year at that time it was about 21.7%. And if we scroll down and look at the international segment results, it's actually quite a bit worse. We can see comparable store sales down 7%, change in transactions down 3%, and change in ticket price down 4%. So they lowered prices to try to fix these other problems, but it hasn't really worked out too well so far. And then operating margin was 15.6%, a huge decline from 19%. So Brian Niccol definitely has some work for him, but again, investors seem to have a lot of confidence in him. If we scroll down, we can see Baird was even more positive about the CEO development at Starbucks. The firm upgraded Starbucks to an outperform rating and set a new price target of $110 per share. So Brian Niccol definitely won't be able to fix Starbucks' problems overnight, but you can't understate just how important having the right leadership is in place to the success of any company. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens moving forward, but Starbucks shareholders have definitely been rewarded for holding the stock today. Now, like always, if you'd like to be able to download any of my spreadsheets and also get access to the ticker data add-on in Google Sheets that allows you to automatically import stock financials straight into your spreadsheet, then you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.